I woke up with 6 screws in my pelvis, and the only message on my phone was from my mum. "Don't worry, sweetheart. We're in Santorini now. Zach needed this break. Oh, and thanks for the credit card. We upgraded to Ocean View." That was the day I realised I wasn't a daughter. I was their retirement plan. I laid broken in a hospital bed while they toasted sunsets in Greece using the money I sent every month. But what they didn't know, that was their last sip on my dime. Because when I heal, I'm not just walking again, I'm walking away for good. When I was 12, my mum promised she'd close her boutique early and take me out for Korean BBQ, just the 2 of us. I'd never been to a restaurant alone with her. She was always too busy arranging flowers, managing suppliers, or worrying about my younger brother Zach. But that morning she cupped my face, smiled and said, "Tonight we celebrate you, Sam. You deserve it." I remember brushing my hair 3 times more than usual, slipping into the lavender dress Aunt May gave me for Christmas, and waiting on the couch like someone waiting for the sun to rise. The clock moved from 6 to 7, then crept toward 8. No text, no call. I called her once, straight to voicemail. At 8:23 p.m, a text finally came. "Sorry, sweetheart. Zach got invited to a last-minute team dinner. I can't miss it. We'll go next week, okay?" I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. My hands were cold, my dress suddenly too tight. I walked into the kitchen, boiled water, and made myself a cup of instant ramen. The cake I bought for myself still sat in the fridge, untouched. Chocolate mousse with a single pink candle, because no one remembered to ask what flavour I liked. But that wasn't the worst part. The next morning, I found a gift box on the dining table. My name was scribbled on the tag in my mum's handwriting. Heart pounding, I peeled back the wrapping. Inside was a basketball jersey, Zach's size, not mine, with a note, "To our superstar, never stop shining." It hit me like a slap. She'd bought Zach's gift, wrote my name on it, and probably forgotten the switch. I didn't cry. I folded the jersey, put it back in the box, and carried it to Zach's room. He was gaming, didn't even look up. I left the box on his bed and closed the door quietly. That night, I brushed my teeth in silence and stared at the family photo in the hallway, 4 smiling faces. But somehow, I looked like a guest in my own picture. Years later, people would ask me why I stopped celebrating birthdays. I never had the heart to say it was because mine never really mattered. After that birthday, I stopped expecting things. Not just gifts or dinners, but attention, warmth, even acknowledgement. I became the child who didn't make noise, who didn't cry when promises were broken, who figured things out alone. If Zach got a fever, my mum rushed home from work. If I had a stomachache, I was told to sleep it off. At school, I excelled. Straight A's, science fairs, mathlete trophies, my way of carving out space in a house that barely saw me. When I brought home awards, Mom would smile briefly, then ask if Zach needed help with his homework. Dad would mutter something about being proud, then turn back to the sports channel. The only person who seemed genuinely happy for me was Mrs. Caldwell, my 9th grade biology teacher. She once pulled me aside and said, "Samantha, you shine so bright. It's a wonder they don't see it." I laughed awkwardly, pretending I didn't understand what she meant. But I did, too well. By 16, I'd learned to cook dinner, fix broken faucets, manage the family's online bills. Meanwhile, Zach coasted through high school with barely passing grades, but he was the sensitive one, the late bloomer. My parents hovered around him like he was made of glass. They called me the responsible one, which really meant the one we don't have to worry about. On my high school graduation day, I sat on the bleachers after the ceremony, still in my cap and gown, holding a program with my name printed in bold. Samantha Lynn, valedictorian. My parents didn't show. Later, I found out they had driven Zach 3 hours to a basketball scouting event. My mum texted, "We're so proud, sweetheart. We know you killed it. Tell us all about it when we're back." I didn't tell them anything. That summer, I got a full scholarship to MIT. I packed my things quietly, bought my own bus ticket, and left before dawn. Mom called me when I arrived on campus, her voice tinged with guilt. "You should have let us take you," she said. I replied, "You had Zach's scrimmage that day, remember?" She went silent. Then, "You know he needs more support than you do." I said nothing, because by then I understood. Love in my house wasn't measured by effort. It was rationed by need, and I had made the mistake of not needing them soon enough. College was the first time I felt air in my lungs. No one to answer to. No Zach barging into my room, asking for help with essays he never read. No silent dinners where my parents spoke only to each other, or about how Zach might just need more time to bloom. At MIT, I was Samantha, not the background character in someone else's family photo. I thrived, double majored in computer science and applied mathematics. I interned at a robotics lab in Boston and later at an AI startup that would go on to IPO 2 years after I joined full-time. I was 22 and fully financially independent, but despite everything, I still called home every Sunday. I told myself it was duty. But if I'm honest, it was hope. A thread I kept tying back to a place I'd never truly belonged, just in case someone on the other end would finally say, "We're proud of you, Sam." Instead, it was always, "Can you send money for Zach's new laptop? The car's acting up again, your dad needs it for church. The florist van broke down. If we miss this wedding order, we're ruined." And I sent it every time. I told myself I was repaying what they gave me. Food, shelter, a roof. I ignored the ache in my gut when my mum forgot my promotion announcement, but remembered Zach's Twitch milestone. Eventually, I automated the transfers, $3,000 a month to my parents, $1,500 to Zach, another $1,000 in incidentals that were never optional. 1 month it was termites, the next a backyard renovation for Dad's blood pressure. And yet, every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, I was alone. They always had an excuse. A flight too expensive. Zach catching a cold. Mum needing to keep the shop open. I once asked if they'd visit me in Seattle. My mum sighed. "It's just so far, honey, and Zach hates long flights. Maybe next year." But every year I saw the same photo on Facebook. Them at some resort. Florida, Arizona, Napa Valley. And always, family time is the best time. They never tagged me. Still, I stayed quiet. Because I believed that maybe, if I kept giving, one day they'd remember I was part of the family too. That belief, fragile and flickering, stayed with me for years, until the accident, until the moment I realized they didn't forget me by mistake. They never remembered me at all. It happened on a Thursday evening. I had stayed late at the lab, debugging a simulation model that refused to converge. Outside, rain was pelting the sidewalks, pooling around tires and blurring headlights into smeared streaks of white and red. I was exhausted, mentally drained and physically numb, but too wired to notice the danger of driving home in that state. I remember turning left on 45th Avenue. The light was green, my turn was clear, and then nothing. No screech, no horn. Just the bone-snapping silence of metal colliding with flesh and frame. Later, they told me a delivery truck ran the red light. He was texting. I was in his blind spot. I didn't stand a chance. When I came to, everything was white and humming, tubes in my arms, my legs frozen under a heavy blanket. My ribs screamed every time I breathed. The ceiling tiles above me looked like a checkerboard of stillness, mocking the chaos that must have come before. A nurse noticed my eyes fluttering. "Samantha," she whispered. "You're in Swedish Medical. You were in an accident. Can you hear me?" I nodded, barely. "Don't speak," she said gently. "You're stable. You've been out for 3 days. The surgeries went well." Surgeries, plural. I drifted in and out of consciousness for hours, maybe days. Time became irrelevant. What mattered was the pain, hot, constant, and everywhere. The nurse, Riley, was the only familiar anchor. She told me I had broken both legs, fractured my pelvis, and suffered internal bleeding. They had inserted titanium rods. Breathing hurt. Moving was impossible. The worst part wasn't physical, though. It was the silence. No flowers, no calls, no family. On the fourth day, I asked Riley, "Did my parents—" She hesitated, shifting her clipboard. "Your mother and brother came by. While you were still unconscious, they didn't stay long. Did they leave a note?" "No, but they seemed in a hurry." My throat closed. I stared at the ceiling again, blinking back the pressure behind my eyes. I reached for my phone, hands trembling, and scrolled through the notifications. One voicemail. I pressed play. "Hi, sweetheart. It's Mum. We're at the airport now. Headed to Santorini with Zach. You're in good hands there, so we figured we'd go ahead with the trip. Don't call while we're gone. Roaming's expensive. Oh, and thanks for the card. It helped us upgrade. Ciao." The beep echoed in the sterile room. They had left. They had used my credit card. And they hadn't even asked if I was alive. I stared at the phone, the voicemail still echoing in my head. Ciao. Not even a "call me when you're better." Not a whisper of concern. Just a breezy farewell, as if I'd stubbed my toe instead of nearly dying. My hands trembled, not from the painkillers or the surgeries, but from the truth unravelling in front of me. They had known. They had come. They had looked at my unconscious body and still left. I tried to rationalise it. Maybe they thought I'd pull through. Maybe they panicked. Maybe... But then I remembered something Riley had said earlier. They didn't stay long because they had a flight to catch. I opened my banking app, 15,642.87 charged to my primary credit card. The note, 3 business class tickets, Santorini, followed by $830 at a luxury boutique hotel, $1,120 at a rooftop restaurant, another $960 for a boat tour. All within 2 days of the accident. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was drowning in air. My oxygen levels spiked and a nurse came rushing in, adjusting my IV, pressing buttons, calling for backup. But none of that compared to the crushing weight inside me. They used my money. The same money I'd sent month after month. For bills, for Zach, for emergencies. They'd used it not just to abandon me, but to celebrate their escape. And that comment on my mum's private Facebook post, "Thanks to our girl for the upgrade, hap family first," suddenly made sense. She had posted it 2 days ago. I had still been sedated, unconscious, tubes in my throat, and they were laughing in the Aegean sun. Riley entered the room again, this time holding a cup of warm tea. She paused when she saw my face, my silence, my clenched fists. "What happened?" she asked softly, placing the cup on the tray. I didn't answer. I just turned my phone toward her and pressed play on the voicemail. As it ended, her eyes darkened. "They left while you were sedated and used your credit card." I nodded, swallowing the rage that threatened to break me from the inside out. She sat down gently beside my bed, her voice low. "Sam, I've seen a lot of families, but this is cruelty wrapped in entitlement." The tears came then, slow, silent, hot. Not just from betrayal, but from realization. This wasn't neglect, it was a choice. They chose a vacation over me, and for the first time I didn't just feel forgotten, I felt erased. That night I didn't sleep. I lay there, eyes fixed on the cracked ceiling tile above me, hearing the beep of machines, the shuffle of nurses' shoes outside, and inside nothing but hollow thunder. They left me. I kept repeating it, like saying it enough times would make it sound less insane, less cruel. I opened the photo again, my mother in a wide-brimmed hat, Zach shirtless by the blue waters of Santorini, both smiling. "Healing our souls," the caption read. I was healing too, except not by the sea. I was healing through the searing ache in my bones, the metal rods drilled into my legs, the staples across my abdomen. No one held my hand through the pain, no one cried over my scars, and they dared to say healing. The next morning, Dr. Lynn came in, my attending physician. Her dark eyes took one look at my face and said it all. "They called again?" she asked. I shook my head. "Still sunbathing." She sat on the edge of the bed and folded her hands. "You have a long recovery ahead. Physical therapy, 6 to 8 months. But there's something else we need to address. Your insurance." My stomach dropped. "What about it?" "You're covered, but your parents listed as emergency contacts. We've been trying to reach them for forms and verification. They've ignored every call." I looked away, ashamed, as if their neglect was my fault. "I've seen people survive worse," Dr. Lynn added gently. "But the ones who heal fastest, they have someone in their corner." "I don't," I whispered. "Not anymore." She stood, reached into her pocket and handed me a small card. "Then build your corner. Start here, financial advisor. She used to work with patients in situations like yours." I took it. Ava Stone, independent consultant. "I'm not sure where to begin," I admitted. Dr. Lynn smiled faintly. "Begin by protecting what's yours." That phrase hit me harder than any morphine drip. Protect what's yours. Because for too long, I'd handed it all over. Not just money, but time, love, forgiveness. Hoping someday it would all be returned. It never was. I stared at the card. I may have been broken, but I wasn't done, and I was finally ready to stop funding my own erasure. 3 days later, I was sitting upright in bed for the first time, propped up with pillows and supported by a metal frame under the sheets. My body still ached with every breath, but my mind had started clearing, sharpening. I called Ava Stone. She answered on the third ring with a crisp, professional tone. "Ava Stone speaking." "This is Samantha Whitaker. Dr. Lynn gave me your card." A pause. Then her voice softened just a bit. "Ah, yes. She mentioned you. Let me guess. Family mixed with finances?" "More like family funded by one sucker." My voice cracked with bitterness. Ava chuckled, but there was no amusement in it. "That's the tagline of half my clients. You ready to make a change?" "I think I'm done being their ATM." We scheduled a video call for the next morning. That night, I compiled every record I could access. Bank transfers, credit card statements, Venmo screenshots, and the infamous Excel file I had kept since I started sending money at 22. I hadn't looked at it in over a year. Opening it now was like reading an autopsy report on my own dignity. Each row was color-coded: rent support, car payments, emergency repairs, Zach's failed YouTube gear, spa days for mum labelled essential stress relief, Dad's monthly golf club dues. Over 6 years, the numbers added up to over $400,000, $400,000, and not one hospital visit. The next morning, Ava appeared on my screen. Late 30s, sharp blazer, glasses that made her look like a financial assassin. "Walk me through what they have access to." I told her everything. The joint account with my mum for emergencies, the auto pay card linked to their utilities, the insurance policies where they were listed as beneficiaries, and the crypto wallet Zach once asked me to create and fund just in case Bitcoin takes off again. Ava's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker behind her eyes, rage maybe, or disbelief so practiced it no longer surprised her. "Okay," she said. "First step, shut it all down, change passwords, cancel cards, open new accounts. We lock every door they've been walking through. You good with that?" I nodded. Second step, she continued, you build new boundaries and we make sure they hold legal weight. For once, I whispered, I want to keep something that's mine. Good, she said, because they've been living on borrowed loyalty. Over the next 2 days, Ava guided me through the digital purge of my financial life. Each step felt like peeling away layers of skin, but not mine. The skin they had built around me like armour I didn't ask for, didn't benefit from, and was tired of carrying. We started with the joint account. I logged in with trembling fingers and transferred the remaining balance, just over $2,300, into a newly opened personal account in my name only. Then I revoked all shared access. Next came the credit cards. I filed fraud reports on the Santorini charges. The bank flagged them immediately for investigation, citing unauthorised use by non-card holders. They offered a provisional refund. I accepted it with numb gratitude. Then came the utilities, gas, water, internet, all tied to my name at the house I hadn't lived in since I was 19. One by one, I called the providers, citing identity risk. I cancelled them all. I think my dad's going to have a heart attack when the cable cuts off mid-Golf Channel, I told Ava during our 4th session. Her lips twitched. Let him. Consider it your first dividend. Then came the vehicles. I had financed 2, a mid-sized SUV my parents claimed they needed for family logistics, and a sporty coupe Zach said was an investment in self-confidence. Both titles were in my name. Both monthly payments auto-deducted from my account. I called the dealership. Can we initiate repossession? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. As long as you're the legal owner and request it in writing, the rep said. I sent the email that night. By day 3, a wave of notifications flooded my phone. Missed calls from Mom, 6 texts from Zach. A voicemail from my dad that started calm and spiraled into rage. You've embarrassed this family, he snapped. We built our lives around your support. Do you expect us to just adjust? Yes, I thought. Exactly that. I didn't answer. I didn't owe them that anymore. Ava and I met again that evening. I sat straighter in my hospital bed now. My bones still ached, but something inside me had begun to reassemble. I feel like I'm erasing them, I told her quietly. You're not, she said. You're erasing their access to you. There's a difference. I nodded. For the first time in years, I felt it too. A beginning. The repossession truck rolled up to my parents' suburban driveway just after 2 p.m, according to the alert sent from the dealership. A blurry photo followed, my dad arguing with the driver, Zach standing barefoot in the driveway, face red with disbelief. I stared at the image for a long time, not out of satisfaction, but to remind myself I wasn't imagining their dependency. It was real. It had been crafted and nurtured like a business model where I was the sole investor. That evening my phone buzzed again. This time it was a new number. I picked up cautiously. You left us stranded in Greece, Samantha. What kind of daughter does that? My mother's voice, sweetened with passive rage. I didn't speak. She continued. Zach had to borrow money from strangers to get us a hotel. Your father's blood pressure is out of control, and now we come home to no cars, no cable, no power, and what? A warning from the bank. Are you proud of yourself? I'm not proud, I said quietly. I'm finally free. Her silence was louder than any scream. You used my money for 6 years, every month, without fail, and when I asked for a break, you called me selfish. Then you left me in a hospital bed, alone. Don't talk to me about abandonment. You don't understand what we've sacrificed for you, she hissed. No, I replied. I finally do. You sacrificed nothing. You simply expected endlessly. I hung up. That night I met with Riley in the hospital garden. She wheeled me outside under the stars, her thermos of chamomile tea balanced on the armrest of my chair. You did it, she whispered. You actually cut them off. I looked up at the sky. Feels like I amputated a limb. But sometimes, she said gently, the infected part has to go before the rest can heal. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. It was small, dry, but it came from something real. I looked at her. Is it okay that I don't miss them? Riley sipped her tea. It's more than okay. It means you're starting to miss yourself. We sat in silence under the dark sky, breathing the night air like it was the first time we'd been allowed to exhale. And I realized sometimes letting go isn't about hate, it's about survival. A week passed, no more voicemails, no new texts, just silence, cold and vast, like an empty house echoing with the absence of voices that once never stopped. At first it felt unsettling. I kept checking my phone, expecting more guilt trips, more outrage, more accusations, but there was nothing. They'd gone silent not out of respect, but strategy. They were regrouping. On the 10th day of my hospital stay, I received an email from my bank. A fraud investigation had concluded. The Santorini charges were confirmed as unauthorized. The funds were fully refunded. A final line read, "Card permanently deactivated." It felt like closing a door I'd spent years holding open, hoping someone would walk through and say, "Thank you." No one ever did. Later that day, Riley brought in a visitor, Ms. Eleanor, my former roommate from the recovery wing. She entered with a cane and a Tupperware of homemade cornbread. "I told them you needed real food," she said, "and some company." I laughed, genuinely. "You might be the first person to visit me just because you wanted to." "Child," she said, sitting beside my bed, "when your body breaks, you learn real fast who comes with glue and who comes with scissors." I stared at her, struck by the quiet truth of her words. That night, I journaled for the first time since the accident. My hands were still weak, but I scribbled. They used to call me ungrateful if I missed a family dinner. But they missed my pain entirely. Who's ungrateful now? They told me I owed them everything, but love built on debt is not love, it's control. I closed the journal and placed it on the nightstand like a sealed testimony. A few hours later, I awoke to another alert. This one wasn't a transaction. It was a photo Mom had posted again. She stood in front of a real estate sign. For sale, Whitaker Home. The caption read, "Starting fresh. Sometimes children forget their roots." And below it, a string of pitying comments from neighbours and family friends. "You deserve better. Kids these days. Stay strong." I stared at it, numb. They weren't telling their story. They were rewriting mine, turning me into the villain in a tale I never agreed to star in. They were weaponizing their version of events. But I had my version too, and I wasn't going to let theirs be the final draft. I scrolled through the comments on Mum's post, each one a blade veiled in sympathy. They painted her as the martyr, the selfless mother abandoned by a cold, ungrateful daughter. Words like heartless, modern kids are selfish, and family should come first danced on the screen like curses. One comment stood out. "Didn't Samantha just buy them a car last year? Something's not adding up." It had no likes, no replies, and within an hour it disappeared. I shut off my phone, not because I was hurt, because I was furious. They weren't just telling a different story. They were erasing mine. Later that day, Riley walked in with a tray of soup and 2 slices of buttered bread. She noticed my clenched fists, the tight set of my jaw. "Online vultures again?" she asked gently. "They're making me out to be the monster," I said, voice shaking. "After everything." She sat beside me. "Samantha, you can't control what they post, but you can decide what you respond to." I turned to her. "But what if people believe them?" "Then those people were never meant to hear your truth," she said. Her calm pierced through my storm. That night I opened my laptop, not to scroll, but to write. I drafted a letter, not to my parents, to myself. Dear Samantha, you've spent years playing saviour. You gave and gave until you forgot how to receive, until your silence became their comfort and your kindness their entitlement. But this story isn't theirs to tell anymore, it's yours. You are not cruel, you are not selfish, you are reclaiming your life. I ended the letter and saved it under a new folder, My Story, Not Theirs. The next day, I printed it out, taped it to the hospital room wall beside the window. Miss Eleanor saw it when she came by and nodded in approval. Your gospel, she said, tapping the paper. By then, something inside me had shifted. I no longer needed their apology. I no longer cared about their pity. I wasn't broken anymore. I was rewriting. And the silence, it didn't scare me. It meant they couldn't twist the truth if I refused to speak their language. By Friday, I was able to stand on my own for 7 seconds. 7 shaky, painful seconds, but mine. Riley timed me with her phone, cheering like I'd just run a marathon. Miss Eleanor clapped from her chair in the corner, humming some triumphant opera tune. Even Leroy, the janitor, gave me a thumbs up through the doorway. It was the first time I felt proud, not of surviving, but of choosing to survive on my terms. That night I received a package. No return address. Inside was a faded photo album. My childhood. My birthday cakes, my school plays, family Christmas mornings, scribbled on the first page in my mother's handwriting, we did love you, once. It wasn't an apology, it was bait, a subtle whisper. Look how good it used to be. Come back. But I didn't cry, I didn't smile either. Instead, I wrote a short note and slipped it back into the return envelope. Love that demands loyalty without respect isn't love, it's control. Please stop. The hospital staff offered to mail it for me. I handed it over without hesitation. The next morning, Riley brought a surprise. She had printed one of my journal entries and framed it. The one that said, I am not broken, I was just misused. She placed it beside my bed. You're becoming someone, she whispered. I'm becoming myself, I corrected her, and for once that felt better than becoming a daughter anyone else wanted me to be. By Sunday I received a single final message from Zach. No rage, no begging, just, you were supposed to be the one who never left. I stared at it, my thumbs hovered over the screen. And then I replied, I didn't leave. I just stopped letting you stay inside my life, rent-free, blocked, deleted, done. The silence after wasn't empty. It was peace, and in that peace I heard something louder than any family feud, louder than guilt, louder than grief. My own voice, for the first time in years, saying, You made it, Sam. You finally made it. The hospital discharged me 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Dr. Singh called it a miraculous recovery, but I knew better. It wasn't miracle. It was motivation. Every breath, every stretch, every agonizing step was fueled by the simple, burning truth. I had no one to fall back on anymore. Riley met me at the curb in a second-hand sedan she borrowed from her brother. She helped me into the front seat, adjusting the seatbelt like she'd done it 100 times before. You sure you're ready? She asked, peering at me over her sunglasses. I nodded. Ready as I'll ever be. Our first stop wasn't a cafe or my new temporary apartment, it was the bank. I need to make a final withdrawal, I told the teller, placing my ID and the closed account folder on the counter. Cash only. The teller raised an eyebrow. It's quite a sum. I leaned in, steady. That's why it needs to be in my hands. She disappeared into the back. Riley glanced at me from the chair beside the window. You're making a statement. I didn't deny it. 15 minutes later, I walked out of the bank with a modest leather satchel, heavy with the weight of 6 years of unpaid boundaries. Back in the car, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath since I was 25. Riley glanced at me. Feel better? I feel real, I said. We drove in silence for a while. Downtown Austin blurred past my window. coffee shops, scooters, college kids laughing. I realised how long it had been since I noticed the world outside my financial spreadsheets. When we arrived at the apartment Riley had helped me rent, small, sunlit, and smelling faintly of cinnamon, I stood at the threshold for a long minute. "Scared?" she asked. "No," I whispered. "I'm grieving, but I'm not scared." Because this wasn't the loss of family, it was the loss of an illusion, and in its place, I had a shot at truth. That night, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my new living room, surrounded by quiet. Not loneliness, just quiet. I opened my laptop and wrote a single sentence in a new journal doc. This is the first day I didn't owe anyone anything. And for once, that wasn't terrifying. It was beautiful. The next morning, I stood at my window, sipping lukewarm tea, watching the sunrise paint streaks of gold across Austin's skyline. It wasn't the view from a penthouse, but it was mine, and for the first time in a decade, I didn't feel the pressure to explain or justify it to anyone. No calls, no lists, no guilt, just quiet. My phone buzzed around 9 a.m., a message from Ava, the financial advisor Riley had introduced me to. "Final document package is ready. Would you like to schedule the notarization this week?" I replied instantly. "Today, if possible." By noon, Ava arrived at my apartment with a sleek portfolio folder and a notary in tow. She laid out each document across my small kitchen table like sacred artifacts. "This officially severs your legal and financial ties to all shared accounts, services, and obligations connected to your parents and brother," she explained. "The car loans, utility bills, shared health policies, everything." I signed each page without hesitation. My hand was steady, my mind was clear. With the last signature, Ava smiled gently. This is your Declaration of Independence." The notary stamped the final form with a heavy thunk, and just like that, done. Ava stood to leave, but paused at the door. "You've done something most people never have the courage to do," she said. "You chose yourself." That line hit me deeper than I expected. After she left, I stared at the stamped documents and realized something. It wasn't just financial, it was emotional too. I had removed their access, not just to my bank accounts, but to my sense of worth. Riley came by that evening with Thai takeout and a set of inexpensive wind chimes. "They make the silence feel alive," she said, hanging them on the balcony. We ate on the floor again, legs crossed, dipping spring rolls in peanut sauce. "So, what now?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I watched the chimes sway in the soft breeze, the light catching each metal strand. "I think I'm going to tell the story," I said finally. She tilted her head. "To who?" "To whoever needs to hear it. Because if I had felt alone through this, someone else probably did too. And maybe, just maybe, my story could be a mirror, a ladder, or even just a hand reaching out of the dark." And that, I realised, was the final withdrawal, taking back my narrative. I spent the following days in a quiet rhythm. Physical therapy in the morning, journaling in the afternoon, long walks, well, careful limps, with Riley in the evenings. Each routine carved out a new part of me I didn't know existed. Not the daughter, not the provider, not the fixer, just Sam. Some nights I woke from dreams where I was still begging my parents to listen, still trying to earn a love that always dangled just out of reach. But those dreams faded faster now, like fog under sunlight. Reality was sharper and kinder. One Friday evening, as rain tapped gently against the window, I opened my laptop and recorded a video. Just me, sitting on my couch, face bare, no script. My name is Sam Hartley, I'm 38, and I've spent the last 12 years funding a family that never saw me as more than a bank account. This isn't a revenge story, it's a recovery one. I spoke for 23 minutes, about birthdays missed, sacrifices made, boundaries violated. About the accident, the voicemail, the silent hospital room, and the choice to stop. I didn't name names, I didn't blame, I just told the truth. When I uploaded it, I didn't expect anything. Maybe a handful of views, a few strangers resonating. But within days, the video began to circulate. Comments poured in from all over the world. This is my story too. I thought I was alone. Thank you for saying the thing I've never had the courage to admit. One message read, "You just saved me from another year of guilt payments to people who never showed up for me." I cried reading that one, not because I was sad, because I was seen. A week later, I received a handwritten letter in the mail. No return address, just my name in familiar cursive. Inside, a single sentence. "We didn't know you'd go this far." No apology, no acknowledgement, just fear, cloaked in disappointment. I burned it in the kitchen sink. Riley watched silently, then handed me a cup of cocoa. I'd say rest in peace, but that letter never had any soul in it. We laughed, and it wasn't a bitter laugh this time. It was warm, deep, and healing, because I hadn't just withdrawn from their lives, I had reinvested in mine. The invitation arrived in a plain white envelope tucked between junk mail and grocery coupons, handwritten, elegant, with a golden seal pressed into the corner. Whittaker Family Reunion, celebrating generations of love and legacy. I stared at it for a long minute, the words blurring into symbols. Then I flipped the card over. Hosted at the old community centre, Saturday, potluck style, bring a dish and a memory. The irony hit me like a gut punch. They were celebrating love and legacy with folding chairs and casserole, and the person who had kept them financially afloat for over a decade was apparently welcome if I brought dessert. I placed the invite on the counter and walked away. For 3 days I ignored it. Riley noticed the shift in me, the way I stared out the window longer, ate less, spoke in shorter sentences. "You going?" she asked one night while we folded laundry. "I shouldn't," I replied, "but part of me wants to see if they'll even acknowledge it, what they did, what they didn't do." She didn't answer, just handed me a soft linen blouse and said, "If you go, don't bring a dish. Bring your boundaries." Saturday arrived like a storm cloud, and against every instinct I went. I didn't wear black or try to disappear. I wore soft blue and stood tall, cane in hand, but stride steady. When I entered the community hall, I was hit with that smell of old linoleum and baked beans. Laughter, clinking cutlery, toddlers darting between tables. And there they were, my parents, standing beside a punch bowl, smiling like nothing had ever broken. My mother's eyes widened when she saw me. Dad looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Connor, surprise, wasn't there. A few cousins waved awkward hellos. A distant aunt offered me a plastic plate. I didn't take it. Instead, I walked to the microphone, set up for some planned slideshow or speech, and tapped it gently. It screeched once, then fell silent. Everyone turned. "I won't stay long," I began, my voice calm. "I just came to say one thing." You could hear a pin drop. "I came to say one thing," I repeated, scanning the crowd, "and I need everyone to hear it." My voice was steady, but my heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't speaking to anyone in particular, not really. I was speaking to myself, to the years I had spent holding on to the belief that this unhealthy, toxic attachment to people who didn't value me was love. And for the first time I felt that truth settle inside me like a heavy stone. "I spent years feeling like I owed you," I said, my gaze slowly turning toward my mother and father, like I was somehow responsible for your happiness, your financial security, your comfort. I believed that if I gave enough, loved enough, made sacrifices big enough, you would see me, you would love me back. I paused for a moment, letting the words hang in the air. But I was wrong. I wasn't your ATM. I wasn't your servant. I was your daughter, and that means something different now. My mother's face hardened. her eyes flickering with anger. My father crossed his arms, his lips thinning into a tight line. I took a deep breath. I am not your backup plan. I am not a lifeline for your neglect, and I won't be silent anymore. My mum's eyes welled with tears, but I didn't flinch. I had seen those tears for years. They were never for me, only for herself. I've spent enough time trying to fix a broken family that wasn't mine to fix, I continued. And I'm done. I looked around the room. A few distant relatives shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. The silence felt different this time, heavy with the weight of truth. I'm not here for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything from you. But I am taking back what was mine to begin with. My peace, my happiness, my future. I turned away from them, stepping back from the microphone and walking toward the door. As I reached for the handle, I heard my mother's voice break through the tension in the room. Samantha, wait. I didn't turn around. I loved you, she said, her voice trembling. I know, I whispered, pausing at the door but not looking back. But love doesn't mean ownership. And with that, I left. I didn't need to hear anything more. I had said what needed to be said, and I had finally done what was necessary. I had walked away. I had let go. I stepped out of the hall and into the cool evening air, my heart still racing. But something else stirred inside me, a strange, liberating calm. The weight of years of manipulation and guilt started to lift piece by piece, like sand slipping through my fingers. Riley was waiting outside by the car, arms folded, a small, knowing smile on her face. Well? She asked, raising an eyebrow. It's done, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I finally said it. You did, she said, stepping forward and opening the door for me. And you've been carrying that weight for far too long. I climbed into the car, feeling lighter with every breath. I never thought I'd be able to walk away. I thought I'd always need them. You didn't need them, she replied softly. You've always had everything you needed inside you. You just had to see it for yourself. As we drove away, the headlights cutting through the night, I felt like I was leaving behind not just the hall, but the last remnants of my old self. The self who was afraid of letting go. The self who thought she had to keep sacrificing to be loved. We passed a park on the edge of town, the streetlights casting soft halos on the grass. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to turn back, to go home, to check on the place where I was never truly at peace. The place where I had once felt like I was drowning in obligations. Where are we going? Riley asked, glancing at me. I looked out the window at the world passing by, wondering how I'd gotten here, wondering what came next. I don't know yet, I said, a smile tugging at the corner of my lips. But I think for the first time in my life, I'm excited to find out. Riley chuckled. I'd say that's a good sign. We drove on, the road ahead uncertain, but mine to navigate. And as we continued on, I realized there was no need to look back anymore. The past had its place, but it no longer had a hold on me. I was no longer defined by their expectations or the roles they had assigned me. This was my life, my future. And for the first time in years, I had all the time in the world to decide what I wanted it to be. The months following that day passed in a blur of small, deliberate steps. I woke up every morning with a new sense of purpose, not just in my work, but in my life. Each day was mine to shape, no longer dictated by the fear of disappointing anyone, no longer ruled by the toxic pull of my family's demands. I threw myself into the work I loved, my job at the fintech company, where I was now leading a team. I started a side project, creating an AI tool to help people track their emotional well-being, something that had been brewing in my mind for years. It felt like finally using my skills for something I wanted, not something someone else needed. But there were moments, quiet moments, when the weight of it all would catch up to me, when the silence in the space where family used to be felt like an old, familiar ache. It wasn't a wound anymore. It was a scar, one that had started to fade into the background, but that would never quite disappear. One morning, as I sat at my desk, drafting code for the emotional well-being app, I received a message. It was from my mother. "We haven't spoken in months. I miss you. Let's talk." I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Part of me felt a tug, an old, deeply ingrained desire to fix things, to heal the rift, to give them one more chance. But I had learned something powerful in the months since I left their world behind. Love is not about giving without end. It's not about sacrifice at the expense of your own well-being. It's about mutual respect, about boundaries that protect both sides. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I went for a walk in the park by my apartment, something I had started doing every morning to clear my head. As I walked, I thought about everything, about the years I had spent apologizing for my existence, about the times I had felt small and insignificant, about the sacrifice I had believed was necessary to be loved. And I thought about Riley, about how, when I was at my lowest, she had been the one who showed up, not because she owed me anything, but because she cared. No manipulation, no strings attached, just genuine kindness. When I returned home, I opened my phone and typed a response. "I'm doing well, Mum, but I can't be part of that world anymore. I've found my own path and I need to keep walking it. I hope you can understand." I hit send. It wasn't a rejection, it was a declaration. I had chosen myself, and that was enough. Weeks went by without any response from my parents. At first, there was a small, persistent part of me that expected a rebuttal, an angry reply. But the silence stretched on, and for the first time, I wasn't anxious about it. I didn't feel the familiar knot in my stomach when I thought of their absence. Instead, there was a quiet space, one I had made for myself, full of possibilities. I spent my days building my app, diving deeper into work, and slowly but surely reconnecting with myself in ways I hadn't imagined possible. I took long walks in the park, experimented with new recipes I had always wanted to try, and even took a weekend trip to a cabin in the woods to clear my head. But it was the quiet moments at night, when I sat on the balcony, sipping tea, looking at the stars, that I began to realize how far I had come. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. I wasn't measuring my worth against their expectations or their demands. I was simply living. Then one morning, I received a notification from an old email account, one I had completely forgotten about. It was an email from my brother, Zach. "I get it now. I always thought you were just abandoning us, but you weren't. I was too selfish to see it. I'm sorry." The words hit me harder than I expected. I had never thought Zach would understand. After everything, the years of neglect, the silent favoritism, the constant demands, I had written him off. But this message, this simple, heartfelt apology, brought with it a sense of closure I hadn't known I needed. I sat there for a long time, reading the words over and over. There was no excuse for his actions, no quick fix to the years of harm. But there was something in this message that felt different. It felt like he was finally seeing me, not as a resource, not as a saviour, but as Samantha. I thought about what to do next. Should I respond? Should I open that door again? I realised I didn't have to decide right away. I had learned something important in the last few months. I get to choose. This was my freedom. The freedom to decide how I wanted to move forward, to choose who I let in and who I left behind. With that realization, I smiled. For the first time, I was walking my own path, and no one could take that away from me. The future, uncertain as it was mine to shape. A few days after Zach's email, I found myself sitting at the park bench I had visited so many times over the past few months. It was early afternoon, the sun shining warmly through the trees, and I was finally beginning to feel the full weight of what had happened. For so long, I had been running from my family's expectations, from their demands, from the image of myself they had shaped for me. But now I was standing still, embracing the space I had created for myself. It was mine, and I was learning how to fill it with things that mattered to me. As I sat there, I replayed the message from Zach in my mind. I get it now. It wasn't an apology that fixed everything. It wasn't a magic wand that made everything okay, but it was a step toward understanding. It was the first time in my life I felt like I wasn't the only one doing the work, carrying the weight. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in my struggle. Zach had started to see me, not as an ATM, not as an older sibling who was supposed to pick up the pieces, but as someone who had been hurt too. I didn't know what I wanted to do with that message yet. I didn't know if I was ready to re-enter that world, if I was ready to forgive, or if I even needed to. What I did know was that this was my choice now. I wasn't tethered to their narrative anymore. I had a say in what happened next. Riley had been my rock through it all. Through the heartbreak, through the loneliness, through the transformation. She had never asked for anything in return, except, of course, for me to be real with myself. I smiled as I remembered her words. You're becoming someone. I had been trying to become who they wanted me to be for so long I had forgotten who I was. But now, in this quiet moment, I realized I had already become who I was meant to be. Someone who could stand up for herself, who could walk away when it was necessary, who could finally say, no more. I took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air fill my lungs. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew this much. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had reclaimed my power, and no one could take that away from me, and for the first time in my life, I was free to choose.